Scott,
Hey, Kory, how are we doing?
welcome.
Thank you.
Happy to have you here.
I'm excited to be here. This will be fun.
So, Scott, I'm going to take a shot in the dark. We haven't talked about this previously. You strike me as a man with cool hobbies.
I have some cool hobbies. They're not golf, that's like my number one. My family, camping, fishing, skiing. I happen to be in Colorado, not Florida. Um, those are my cool hobbies. They're not that cool, I guess.
Bob,
It's not like I'm skydiving or flying planes or flying SpaceX or anything like that, but I can try.
when you cook,
Oh, absolutely.
I
I'm
strike
a
me
really
as a chef.
My wife can't cook very well. She can cook chicken. Honey, if you see this, I'm sorry. But yeah, they're not the greatest. So I am the one that cooks around the house. No question about it.
So, let's get into your background a little bit, and we're going to jump around. But, you and I had a chance to connect recently, and architectural concepts, you kept bringing up these two terms, culture and ethos. Can
Hmm.
you explain to me what those mean to you and what they are?
Yeah, no, I think in our industry, just obviously we're in the hospitality, multifamily um, industry, and I think a lot of companies through acquisitions, private equity, in my opinion, has really hurt our industry in general. And what I mean by that is just we've lost sight of really who pays our paycheck and who our customer really is. And from our side of things at AC is not losing sight of who puts food on our table. And that's our true north ethos of like do what we say we're going to do, tell the truth, be who we're going to be, and be everything to someone like yourself as we supply you doors and other doors, frames, and hardware, and not lose sight of that. I think our industry in general has lost that through this acquisition over the last 20 years, all these acquisitions that have happened. And so I just think it's simple, but we need to get back to that as an industry.
Can you take us back, Scott? And you can go as far back as you want, but let's talk pre-architectural concepts
Okay.
and maybe anything that has to do with childhood and growing up, and essentially how you got into the door business originally.
Oh boy. Yeah. So that's a loaded question. So I was a, so we'll just go through college. So I went to school at Arizona, bear down, go cat.
Let's go.
Um, oh yeah, let's
Yep.
go. All
Yep.
right, we're number one right now, so let's go. Um, so when I graduated, I really didn't know. I was pre med. I couldn't spell, and I got to immunology, and I knew I was going to fail. And I was really good at the rest of them, organic chem and anatomy physiology. And I was like, well, I'll do marketing and fine arts. That sounds like a great move. So I did that. And when I got out of school, I was building pools. I was a steel tire and guniter for pools for a company called Petty Pools down in Tucson. We expect some kickbacks from Petty Pools after this one. But so I didn't really know what to do. I was running a couple crews. I was a nozzleman, helped finishing, doing walls, that kind of thing. And I applied to Georgia Pacific. I was like, I got to find a job that's not using my muscles, and my back will go out at some point in my future. So I applied like 5 times to Georgia Pacific to get a job, and they kept losing my resume. I called every week on Friday, every Friday at 9 a.m. and just kept calling them. And they finally, I think, hired me just because they wanted me to stop calling. I'm pretty sure. And this is before, before really the internet. This was in '94, I think it was '95. Yeah, '95. And so I was sending FedEx resumes in. So it was interesting. So I think they just hired me because they wanted me to stop calling. Um, so I got into the millwork business. I started selling hollow core doors, pre-hungs, and millwork to Home Depot, taking care of all the Home Depots in Phoenix. And that's kind of where I started. And then they pulled out of the West. It was probably one of my dad's best advice to me is I love this. I was getting married. We're buying our first house. My wife and I'm like, look, I'm going to lose my job. Georgia Pacific was pulling out of the West Coast in distribution. And I'm like, oh, shoot, what am I going to do? My dad's like, well, did you have competitors? I'm like, well, yeah. Well, were you good at what you did? And I said, I think I was pretty darn good at what I did. And so I called my my competitors, and I had interviews the next day with 3 of them. And I got hired really on the spot by a company called Smith Molding and doubled my salary overnight. And I'm like, man, I was totally underpaid. And mind you, I was only making $25,000 a year, so it wasn't very much money at the time. So I'm making 50. I'm like, hey, I'm ranking in the dollars. Yeah, and I went from there. Got recruited by a composite panel company called Sierra Pine. They're no longer. They sold all their. It was MDF plants, particle board plants, no formaldehyde MDF, specialty products. So I was a field service rep for them across the U.S., finding opportunities for specialty products in our industry, and came across a door company in Denver, tried to sell them material. They started buying from me, and then they recruited me to be their national sales manager, and then became their VP of commercial for a company called True Style back in the day. So I was working for them, and then I started AC 6 years later after that. So that's kind of how it progressed on my background, I guess. It's a Cliff Notes.
When you were with True Style, is that when you started selling doors to the hospitality industry?
It was. So we were only residential when I was there. We had one commercial project, which was the Las Vegas Hilton, and we weren't really good at the commercial machining and how to go to that market. And I saw a huge opportunity for large projects, Vegas, other areas in the hospitality that really never was thought of for like style and rail, like architectural doors. Like hotels that were built, from the beginning have always been flush doors, very generic, very consistent. There wasn't really any design intent. It was just like, here's a hotel room or a motel, and that was it. I met a gentleman by the name of Tim Sefchuk at Marriott, probably about a year into my tenure at True Style, and we really started working together on design. And really, his idea was to change that environment of the full service hotels, the full service Marriott, Ritz-Carlton. And I was working with Kimpton at the same time, and they were trying to do the same thing to really get hotels to look more homey, I guess is a good way, and more architectural intent, and really pull some of the local vibe where the hotels are located versus everyone looking the same across the world, right? There was consistency. So I started working with them, learned, and really worked hard for them to design doors with them to get specified into their hotels.
So, Scott, if you're working with True Style, and at the time the company was mostly residential and didn't do a lot of commercial, how did that initial relationship with Marriott and Kimpton start? How you, as the representative of a company that doesn't sell hotel, let alone commercial doors, how did you start building a rapport, and how did they trust you to say, Scott, we want to make hotels feel more homey, and I think you're the guy to help us? How did that come about?
Well, so we were writing these specifications for Marriott, and months would go by, 6 months, and then I would get a phone call from Tim Sefchuk from Marriott, and he goes, Scott, I'm on this project. I specified this one panel door. I am looking at flush doors in my building. And I'm like, okay. He's like, why do I have flush doors? I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't even know about the project. So tell me the details. So he gave me like the general contractor, the property, and I started just kind of doing a reverse analysis of it and go see the distributor that was the commercial distributor at the time supplying the project. And they would look at it from VE right out of the gates instead of what was in budget. And they lost track of really true economics, in my opinion, and finances. Like, and I'm just making up numbers right now, but for example, my door was say $200, and I budgeted 35 margin, and I'm just making numbers up. And it was in the budget. The owners were going to buy it. Well, they get the plans, they see it, and they're like, wow, this is a custom one panel door. So I'll give you a flush door that's $50, and I'll make 35 margin on that, and I saved you a bunch of money. And they did a total disservice not only to the owner and the property, but a disservice to the owner of their company because, as 35 margin on $50 versus 35 on 200, a little different. You make more money. And so that happened probably 4, 5, 6 times. And Marriott was very close to the vest with the projects. They wouldn't really share with vendors like projects coming up in the pipeline and those things. And so for me, it was kind of flying blind. And I would tell Tim that I'm like, look, I want to help you, but if I don't know about the project, how can I bird dog it for you to make sure through the channel, because this is a new product going into the hotels, I'm going to have trouble getting the pull through if I don't know anything. Like, you're just calling me later after it's too late. And so we have to be more in front of that, and especially changing the mindset of a hotel owner and just the design in hotels with new products. You know how that is. It takes time and people have to follow it through. So, and that's really how it started to go. And then they would start getting me involved in the design with the designer and the owner and budgets up front. And so I was basically on Saturdays, Sundays writing budgets for Marriott and Kimpton. And Kimpton had the same story. And so I started doing budgets on my own time. And my wife's like, what are you doing? Why are you working Saturday doing budgets for Marriott? Like, they're not paying you. And I'm like, no, but this is a service to them. And I think it'll help everyone and hopefully myself down the road. And so I started writing budgets with hardware, and I wasn't even selling hardware. I was selling doors. So I was calling up people I knew in the industry, like, hey, how much is a roller latch? And how much is a hull metal frame? And how much is a lock? And they're like, well, list price. I'm like, I don't want list. Like, if I'm a commercial distributor, what do I pay for it? And then I would put a decent margin on it to have a good budget. And that's what I was doing. And it was working for Marriott. They started getting some traction with that by having good budgets up front. So that's where it kind of started.
So from there, you were with TrueStyle a while.
Mm-hmm.
How and when do you decide, to go out on your own and leave,
Yeah.
leave the company?
Yeah. So I worked for the founders. There's definitely some back and forth on this one, but I worked for the founders. They went through a private equity sale for half of the ownership for one of the owners. And then the new people that came in, I just did not see eye to eye with them. That's a couple cocktails later, but so I looked at it and really I went on vacation for my sister's wedding in Australia. I had never been overseas. This is before phones were working worldwide. My wife actually Audrey took the laptop out of my backpack and hid it. So I got on the plane and we're going to Australia for a 16-hour flight out of LA. And I'm like, where's my laptop? And she's like, I took it out. I'm like, what? I'm like, you're on vacation. You're not doing anything. So before I left, I had told everyone, the new owners, I'm like, look, I'm gone for 2 weeks. So you guys have to do all this. And here's everything that's going on and blah, blah, blah. Well, I come back and nobody did anything. And my phone was full. My emails were coming through. Customers mad. Marriott's mad. All kinds of people are mad. And I literally drove right to the hospital on the way to work on Monday, thinking I was having a heart attack. And my wife looked at me and she goes, you're not dying for them. If you're going to die, you die on your own and do it for yourself. And I was like, well, I'm dying right now, so I'm not sure we're going to be able to do anything after this. So I get to the hospital. It was an anxiety attack, just like having a heart attack. And from there, I was like, look, I gotta come up with something. And I had thought about doing my own distribution model, servicing the hospitality and the renovation side. And at the same time, Marriott was getting frustrated and Kimpton was getting frustrated with not getting the products, even when I'd specified and walk it through, wouldn't get it to these properties across the United States, because you'd have a distributor in each local market, the general contractor, whether it was local or national like yourself, right? They would come in, sit down, they would find a commercial door and hardware company. Well, they didn't know TrueStyle or they didn't know Style and Rail doors, so they would default to flush doors. It was this constant battle. And so I got pulled into Marriott with like 10 executives sitting in this room, and they're just drilling me. They're like, why aren't we getting what we want? I'm like, I don't own these companies. Like I'm working everything I can, but we need to work harder at the spec and hold the spec. And then finally, Dave Rizzo and Tim Sefchuk said, well, why don't you start your own company? We'll funnel stuff to you. And then we know we're going to get what we want. And I was like, well, matter of fact, I've been thinking about this. And so that was really the kind of the breaking point of, I didn't want to work for this company anymore. I didn't like how they were treating customers. TrueStyle was not doing what I originally signed up for. They lost their way. And this comes back to what we talked about in the beginning about the ethos and customer service and doing what you say you're going to do. And they pivoted and weren't doing that. And so it was a perfect time that I just said, all right, babe, this is how much money we can get from our house and everything we own. Our credit line is like, it was like 150,000, I think I got. And I got a little office and I said, okay, here we go. And that was in '07. And so then the market just goes, whoosh. I called Marriott and Host Hotels at the time. And Kimpton, I said, hey, do you guys have any work? Because I may starve to death. And they're like, yeah, we got this project and this project. So I got 3 projects in a row. I did the Swiss Hotel in Chicago, 70 Park Kimpton Hotel in New York in Manhattan, 36th and Park, and then the Sheraton. So it turned out, it worked out great. And that's where it kind of started. And that's where the AC comes from, is my wife's name's Audrey Colby. So it was, this is not everybody knows this. So I started it because she's the one that really had the confidence in me, even though I had confidence. And she pushed me over the edge and said, look, what's the worst thing that can happen? I grew up poor. She was like, look, we'll live in an apartment. Who cares? But you'll do this and you'll do it well. And that was, behind every great man is a great woman, right? So that's, so that's kind of how it got started. And, I remember setting up the phone system. So it's just me, right? So it's like, okay, I had this phone system that says, okay, 1 for manufacturing, 2 for sales, 3 for accounting, 4 for project management, all these, and they all just funneled to me. And so I was trying to figure out if I had to change my voice.
Changing your voice?
Voicemails. Hello. This is shipping. So anyway, it was fun. So that's how it started.
I appreciate you sharing that. And I was going to ask you, I've always wondered how you came up with the name, Architectural Concepts in AC. So that's a really special meaning.
It is. And I didn't want to pigeonhole myself and call it Colby's Doors and Hardware, or, I always knew the industry needed experts in more than just one discipline. Like Division 8 has always been a difficult division in construction industry in general. And I didn't want to pigeonhole myself to that. Like I knew I was going to get into other things, whether, glass or, there's just other things I wanted to get into. And I just didn't want it to be something doors and frames. And I knew it had to be AC for Audrey Colby. And so I came up with, in Corel Draw, the first logo, trying to figure out, what to name it. And so it ended up being the Architectural Concepts. Worked out pretty well. And and so that came.
So like a lot of successful founders, and I agree with you about the strong woman behind the successful man, but Audrey gives you the final push, but you guys both go into this with sort of a burn the boats mentality. You put everything on the line. Where did that appetite for risk come from? Not everybody has that in their gut or ability to tolerate that kind of risk and leap of faith going on your own for your first time.
True.
Where does that come from?
It was, I think my dad was a super hard worker. Worked for Hager Slacks, was just an outside salesman for Wisconsin, Upper Michigan. And he was always gone, working all the time. And my dad was always like, the work ethic was always earn your dollar. Since I was like 13 working, he's like, this is what I always started understanding what it took to make $1 and then put that in perspective of everything around me. Like I wanted to go out to lunch. I played tennis. So I had to buy a tennis racket. It was, at that time, I think rackets were like $70. And I'm like, I have a paper out, I'm making $5 a day. I'm like, holy cow, I'm going to work an entire month just to afford a tennis racket. And so every job I had, I always treated it as my own. Like the dollars that were spent, like I would travel. Like my first time with Georgia Pacific, I stayed at a Motel 6 in Douglas, Arizona. I highly do not ever stay there ever in your life. But it was $39. I thought I was a company guy. I was driving all night. I went in and I'm like, I didn't want to spend money. I wanted to be as frugal as possible, even though it was Georgia Pacific, right? $1 billion company. And, they're not going to care between $39 and $100 more than likely. But in my mind was, I need to be a steward of the money, regardless of the level you're in a company. I think in my mind, and it's true to this day, like with all my employees. Like, look, pay attention to what you're spending. Like, would you spend that money if it was yourself? Does it make sense? And so that was one of my first ones. I'm like, all right, note to self, I'm not staying at that Motel 6 ever again, because I didn't even get in the covers. I put like, I took all the linens and when I took a shower, I put it on the ground because it was so nasty. So anyway, but I think, my dad really did it, and I think just him teaching me the value of a dollar, I just think kind of came with me in the work environment. My dad's like, look, no one's going to give anything to you. You're going to have to earn it and work your butt off to grow up the company ladder and to build your worth. And then with my wife just saying, what's the worst thing that can happen, right? We can live in an apartment. I didn't have a plan B. This was plan A. And I knew true wealth in the world is, it's hard to do it when you're working for someone else. You'll make a good salary. You'll get it through. You might get some good 401ks and go there, but it's hard, unless you become an executive at a really big company and then, stock options and those type of things. But at that time, I'm like, look, if I really wanted to change our lives, which I wanted to give my wife everything she ever wanted, I knew if I started from scratch, worked my butt off, at some point in the future, it would pay off. And it's not for the faint of heart, as you know, Kory. I think there was 3 times I almost lost all of it through recessions and trying to grow too fast. Like, there's just so many business things that's where all the gray hair comes from, and the wrinkles. But yeah, it's a tough. It's not easy. It's not easy.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to say more about the perseverance and the ability in the 3 times you almost lost the company. And even back when you had your anxiety attack, as an employee of True Style, how do you get up the next day and keep moving forward? And is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. Yeah, you wake up and you're depressed. You're like, I don't even want to go to work today because it's just going to be a horrible day of where's my money, and I got to pay vendors, and I looked at it, I was like, look, this is part of it. This is, with growth comes pain, and you have to, you're the last one to get anything, right? As you know. So, you know what, honey, we're going to eat ramen, and that's it. And I'm going to work till 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and I'm going to make this happen, and I will grind and do it. I mean, I've got so many stories from when we were in the hood in Sheridan, Colorado, and the police come in at 3 a.m. because I have the music on and I didn't lock the front door, and they're like, hey, knock knock, and they're like, hello, and I'm like, turn the radio down. I'm like, yeah, it's the police. They're like, hey, is everything okay in here? I'm like, yeah, just plugging away, at 3 a.m. And they're like, are you armed? And I'm like, is that a trick question? For the laws in Sheridan. So anyway, it was, and then they used to come in the night and have coffee with me. I mean, it's just, you will do everything in your power to be successful. You will not give up. Like, there's a difference between people that go into something with a plan B, and I'm going to limelight this, and I think it's going to turn into something. And my advice is, there is no plan B. You can't start something with, yeah, if this doesn't work out, then this is going to happen. Like, for me, it's, you're all in and you've jumped off the cliff and there's no parachute. Like, I'm going to be Superman, and I'm going to fly, and I'm going to make this happen. And you will do it. Like, if you put your mind to it, I think anybody, and I'm definitely not the smartest man in the world, for sure. But if you're driven, you have somewhat smarts, and you're honest about how you're going to do business, and I think you will succeed. And it's hard, as you know, as you're the new person on the block and you're trying to earn work and margins are thin, but you do what you're going to do, you will get loyalty from your customers. I'm a firm believer in, I think customer satisfaction is worthless, and customer loyalty is priceless. It's a book I read, probably 20 years ago, by Jeffrey Gitmer, and it's true. Like, satisfying a customer, that doesn't matter. Having loyal customers, and I would, how Lance and what we've done with your team at Access, like, loyalty matters. Like, we'll climb a hill and die for you. And I think that is lost. So that's what's made, from the day one, that is how I've always operated, and always said, look, I'm going to do everything for my customers that I can, and I will do it. I'll be clear and transparent and honest about it. And for a fair margin. I'm not going to try to, rape and pillage people. I think that's wrong. I think you do a fair margin for the amount of work you have to do. And I don't know, I think if you lead that and don't stray, you will be successful.
I don't know if you realize, but your company logo and nickname is AC, and you said no plan B a couple times there, so you skipped over the B.
Oh, hey,
AC.
I like that.
So transitioning a little bit, when you started the early business, correct me if I'm wrong, you're just a distributor at this point.
Correct.
You're selling other people's products to Marriott, Kimpton, and other hotel clients, but you're not manufacturing or making anything at this point. And
Correct.
so back to the burn the boats, no plan B mentality. At some point in this journey, you and Audrey say, I think we got to start making doors ourselves, which
Yeah.
in some ways may be even a crazier move, building a door plant, than going out on your own as a distributor. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I brought a partner. So, well, back up just a hair. So like about 3 years into it, Marriott came to us and said, hey, doors are, I appreciate what you're doing for doors. We started creating barn doors and importing barn door hardware before barn door hardware is what it is today for this king room renovation. And they came to us and said, look, we want shower doors. I said, okay, it's glass, it's a door. How hard can it be? It's a little harder than regular wood doors. So I started reaching around local distributors and just local manufacturers. And I got this guy's name's Josh Morgan, my partner today. We met up. He's a shower door expert, has his own glass and glazing company. Great guy. We see eye to eye, super smart. And I said, look, I need shower doors for hotels, like 300 at a time, and they can't be $2,000 shower doors. They need to be like $500. And he's like, well, let's figure it out. And he helped figure it out. We had a lot of synergies. We brought in his company, kind of absorbed it, and we became partners on the shower door side. So that was, and then we started manufacturing shower doors from overseas and importing them and stocking them. And that was our first kind of like, not necessarily manufacturing ourselves, but OEMing it, from a global standpoint, if you will. And so as the years have gone by, we were talking about private equity and consolidation in our industry, and you have the juggernauts of and I won't name all the names out there, but like the Masonites of the world and Geldwins and all these bigger ones that are out there have been acquiring all these companies, and unfortunately, a lot of them went out of business. It talks through of how you lose the ethos and the culture of a business when it gets bought by big conglomerates that just try to engulf it and lose what made that. Why was that business so successful in the beginning? And then you lose that, and then the business is lost. Like everyone has apathy, and it is just this downward spiral. And so we were buying doors from all of these. True Style got bought, Supla got bought, ABS. All these manufacturers kept getting bought, and they started ruining the companies. And the pricing went up. The customer service started going down. Pricing was up. Like it's just lead times out. We started losing sight of what made these companies great, and they're gone. And so, this now 6 years ago, I was talking to Josh, my partner, and I'm like, you know what? I did this before when I worked for the founders of True Style. Like, I know this inside and out. Talked to my wife and said, what do you think about going all in? And my wife was like, hell yes. She's like, you got that. Everyone else, to your point, thought I lost my mind. They're like, you're going to start a greenfield manufacturing plant in Denver? You're out of your mind. I'm like, I don't think so. Like, I'm going to build this to supply doors to myself and to take care of my customers. So if I can stopgap some of the problems that our industry is having today and supply something that's hard to get, short lead times, better pricing, that's going to make us better for people like yourself and others and the owners and the brands themselves, like Marriott, IHG, Hilton, right? All of them, Kimpton. And so Josh and I are like, all right, we're going to be in like 3 million and take down 40,000 square feet and started building it. And that was in 19. So I really start these new businesses in great time frames. 07, let's do 19 right before COVID. Great idea. So built that and couldn't get an inspector into my plant. I remember being on the phone with with the electrical inspector for Denver, and he's like, "Hey, it's COVID." I'm like, "No, I understand it's COVID. There's nobody in a 40,000 square foot plant. Like, you can go lick the walls. Like, I'm not sure what you're worried about. Well, it's COVID." I'm like, "Dude, there's nobody there. Like, literally, you can roll around, be naked, do whatever. Like, there's no one there." And so it just took forever to get it built, and it worked out well because everyone else got shut down, right? So all of my competition had, with raw materials and everything shut down. It actually worked out well for us because it allowed us to keep building the plants while others were contracted and shut down. And then we came out of that, really strong and supplying doors to ourselves. So that wasn't without pain either, but
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack there, and I've had the pleasure and opportunity of seeing the door plant, yourself. But you go from a distributor that's working out of an office selling other people's products and just making sure you're selling the right thing and that it gets there, to now you have to make the product. How did you know where to even start about, the level? And I'm sure it's evolved since 19, but the manufacturing, what machines do I need? How do I get them? The financing, the capital. I mean, there's a lot of new things, but again, you seem to have this through line that your appetite and ability to go all in with Audrey's support,
yeah,
seems to be a recurring thing and risk. But you finally have a stable business, and then you decide to blow it all up again and take it to the next level.
yep. I
How did
mean,
you
I think
those
what's
things
that?
out? It's I'm on my own now. I got to build doors.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, I had a know-how, so I knew MDF because I worked for an MDF manufacturer. I worked for a door manufacturer. I understand style and rail doors. My whole career, 30 years in this industry, and I knew what to do and what not to do, what worked in the industry and what didn't over my career of like, why did doors fail? Why didn't they fail? Um, and knew, and have kind of a little bit of an engineering background. So for me, it was just kind of, I know what machines we want. We had talked to our bank, Josh and I did, and we said, well, what kind of line can we get for machinery? And then from there, I backed into what are mission critical machines that can't break down, that have to be robust in order to get to from 0 to 3,000 doors as soon as possible. And so I went in and knew what machines I wanted. I went to the IWF show, the International Woodworking Fair in Atlanta, and they had one in Vegas, to really start looking at the flow and process and what I could afford. Identified key machinery that critical, and I said, okay, I can buy a lot of these other ones used. So I went on a lot of auction sites trying to find machinery that fit the bill. I knew what kind of tooling we wanted to do. I knew what kind of MDF I wanted to use. I knew what was failing at other manufacturers. So that was really kind of how I looked at it. Knew I only had X amount of dollars to spend. So I said, to get the first doors off the line, here's the critical path stuff I need. And then I knew when I laid out the plant that I could buy an upgrade or parlay other machinery into it as we grew. Like, I knew the first month I'm going to do maybe 100 doors, not even. And so it was 5 of us building doors. So, I was building them and selling them, and, I'm out there running molders and assembly racks and the prime line, and the core group of us, Josie, Carmelo, myself, Edgar, Pepe, like we started it from the 5 of us building doors. And so I knew this is what I could afford until we could start generating revenue. And then once we start generating revenue, where we could put some extra money in, and we already had other businesses, right? Door Frames Hardware. We had the glass and glazing and shower doors already in there, so that helped finance some of it as well. So we had the banks help, our personal finances, as well as we have revenue coming in, right? So
And at this point in the game, let's talk about hospitality and hotels. Back from you're an employee, a true style, and you have this relationship with Marriott and Kimpton. They are urging you to start your own business. And then from there, you're continuing to sell. Now through your own company into hospitality. You build your door plant. Assuming you're building that to stay in hospitality. And I know today hospitality is, the lion's share of your business across product lines from doors to shower doors and other. Why hospitality? You're building a door plant. Every commercial building and even house, in the world needs a door. Why is it hotels and why is it hospitality for you?
Yeah, I think two fronts. One is design intent. Homes still go cheap. The hotels really were really trying to dress up and make something unique to a market. So I thought from a design standpoint, also volume. I looked at, when you have 300 rooms and you have 3 doors per room, or 1,200 doors is very appetizing and they flow through a plant really well when you're doing hundreds of the same thing versus a house pack, which has, say 30 doors, but every door is a different size, maybe different design. So I saw an opportunity there, and also for the retrofitting to hotels because they're not all the same, right? Things have settled over the years. They may have renovated a floor that's different than the rest of the floors, different, hinge locations, strike locations. And there's really no one doing a good job of supplying that to be able to pivot and have, 5 floors of one type and the other floors of another size and get them there on time. And so I looked at it from a volume and design standpoint that I really enjoyed it. And I've always enjoyed the hospitality industry. It's just good people. It's pretty incestuous, which is crazy for how big of a market it is, but everyone knows each other. And I had a lot of friends and, the ones from Marriott and Hilton, and all of them have kind of, left and went to other places. And so that was really why I wanted it. Residential was more complicated. Yeah, I could charge more for the doors, but I was really looking for the volume to really capture that market and offer better design intent.
As a general contractor, specializing in hospitality, you've become our door and shower door supplier, but particularly on doors, frames, and hardware. From my perspective as a general, you're the most complicated part of a hotel renovation.
Yeah.
People look at a door and don't think twice about it, but when you're in the construction world, particularly the renovation of retrofitting an existing building, doors, frames, hardware is extremely complicated.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've loved about our AC and Lance, you're able to simplify such a complicated piece for us. And can you speak more about that and how do you simplify such an easy, such a complicated thing? And one of the things, back to your culture and ethos, that I love about you guys and Lance is the specs. The plans and specs are often, they're written in black and white, but there's a lot of gray, so to speak. A lot of times you drew something, it's not going to work, and AC is not afraid to review it, understand it, and tell us this isn't going to work. So I know that's a long question, but can you speak to how complicated of a product you're selling, the service that goes along with it, and how you're able to simplify it for the hospitality market?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Obviously, Division 8, like you said, doors, frames, hardware is it's the bane of existence, I think, with some general contractors, and because you can't get like an A minus, right? Either door works or it doesn't, so it's an A or an F. Like that's as simple. So you could do everything right. I ordered the doors right. I ordered all the hardware right, and then the hinge location from a door manufacturer is off by half an inch. You're done. Okay, now I got to get all new doors. Or the hardware comes in the wrong finish. The box says 26D satin, satin chrome, and they came in Oro bronze. And then you're shipping all those back, and then those are coming back. And then, time frames, it's late. You have all these problems with manufacturing and lead times, and we're turning floors every 2 weeks. I can't wait 12 weeks, 14 weeks, right? So that's the first part is dialing it in right. I think from our standpoint is we look at it from a different lens than typical commercial hardware companies, right? Plans and specs, black and white. Here's your price. If you want something else, let me know and I'll sell it to you. That's great for new construction because they're usually dialed in fairly well. Wall conditions, it's new construction. We know how we're going to build this thing. Renovations, to your point, is you get plans from like 1960s. or 1980s. Like no one's updated the plans in like 5 renovations cycles. So you get this set of plans and they're like, well, here it is. And I like to call it, it's not really the gray. I like to think of it, we work in charcoal because we really have no idea what it is. Like, here's an idea. We think the room count's correct. Okay, great. We believe there's an entry door and a closet and a bathroom door. We got that. And that's about all we have to go on. And so these specs that come to us from like the hardware manufacturers, and this is one of my favorites, is just they over hardware. Like, again, if you're going to give plans to a consultant to put in hardware for it, they're going to over hardware because that's how they're incentivized, right? The more hardware I put on it, I make more money. Well, for my cheap seats, I look at it from the lens of yourself and the owner. Like, does that property need it? And I would say Lance is great at it. Like, he's like my mini me of looking at something going, do you need a grade 1 door closer for every entry door to a hotel room? The answer would be no, you don't. Exterior, sure. But again, they put those in the hardware specs and they're like, no sub, you're getting this grade 1 closer. I'm like, okay, you're not spending $200 for a closer, period. How about $50 would be a good one for a good grade 2, maybe grade 3 closer that works and meets function, NFP 80, life safety. And so we look at it from, yes, we take the design and specs as a blueprint of an idea of what we're looking for. The designers draw a door that is in CAD and they say, well, this is what I want. I'm like, well, you really can't build it that way. But here's how we can build it. And so we look at it from that perspective and get back to you and the owners and say, okay, here was the wish list that you had in the specs and that was X. And here's what if it was our property, this is what I would do and what I would invest in. And this is the number. And here's why. And come at it from that direction. And people don't do that. They're like, I want to sell a grade 1 closer on every door because I'm going to make a bunch of money on it. Right. And it's true. I mean, I've done huge hotels. The Gaylord in the Rockies is a great example of this. Is the hardware spec that came across was just so over hardware spec by a company called Legion, and it was awful. And I told it was Rita Development, and I just told Dave Bray at the time. I said, Dave, this is great, and I would love to sell all of it to you, 100%, because I'm going to make a bunch of money. But you don't need all this. This isn't what you need. So I put together with my team of what we think we should have on there, and different manufacturers. Everything works together. Everything makes code spec, right? We didn't value engineer it or price engineer it. We did it value engineering the right way, making sure meets function, looks correct, but we can move things around. And we came back and saved them like $750,000 just in hardware. That's a big number. And that's how we've always done it. That's how Lance does it for you guys, is just looking at it from that lens of what we're going to sell you. And then from there, okay, we're going to have to come out and verify all this. Again, these plans are just so gray and charcoal that you don't even know. On every one of our projects, we go out and field measure every single opening. And I've told my team, and we've done it since day one, since I was doing it, because I learned my mistake on one hotel and I will never do it again. And tell the story, like, you touch every opening, you measure every hinge location, every strike location. What is the width? What is the height? And is it out of plumb? Is it out of square? And because if you don't, you'll do what I did. Is I was doing a Hilton Valley Forge, 9 floors, everything's the same, every tower is the same, all wall conditions are the same, every hinge and strike locations were dead on. And I had a flight leaving Philly and I only had like 2 hours to get to the airport. And I was down at, there was one more floor, and I'm like, oh, everything's right. I'm going to miss my flight if I measure the 10th floor. And so I chose to not measure the 10th floor and left, as you can see where this is going. So then we're doing the renovation. Everything's going great. The project manager calls me and he goes, Colby, we got a problem. I'm like, what's the problem? We're on the 10th floor. Nothing matches. I'm like, what do you mean nothing matches? He goes, like, the hinges are off by like a half an inch to an inch, and strike location's like 3 inches off. I'm like, what? Find out, floor 10 had a flood years ago, tore everything out, put in all new hull metal frames from a different manufacturer, and nothing lined up. So I ate 97 doors that had to order those twice, and begged my vendors to help me back in the day. And from that, I've told every one of my project managers and APMs that you touch every opening. You don't leave. If you spend another day, I don't care, but you're hitting every opening to ensure when we come back, we are 99.9% sure everything's going to work. And that's a big, for my cheap seats, for the owner and for yourself, that's comfortability of knowing that you're not scrambling when doors show up and nothing fits, right? And then we're missing the give the floors back, then you have liquidated damages, you have all these things that start to compile and snowball, and we don't want that. So I think that's the, from a business side of things, that's how we approach everything. And yeah, it's cost me money in the sense that I could have made more money doing it what the spec was. But I think in the end of the day, it gained more loyalty from my customers, knowing that we're going to treat them right and give them and not screw them, I guess is a good way to look at it. So
the field measurements are invaluable, and nothing gives me more comfort as a general contractor that I have Lance and you as I have a door guy, and I don't need to understand this door schedule because I have a door guy, and I have full confidence. This isn't like buying widgets. There are some things I can send a spec to a vendor, and it's a transactional service, and they're going to send me the widget that I sent them. Doors couldn't be any further from that. So the culture and the service level that you've built, I think, speaks a lot to what's driving your success, particularly in the hospitality business. Switching gears a little bit, you've built a manufacturing plant here in America, in Colorado. You've also had experience importing stuff from overseas, and in today's world of supply chain tariffs and what have you, can you speak a little bit from your perspective of where we are in terms of made in America versus imports, and particularly in our world that historically speaking has always been China, Asia import in hospitality, and how you're trying to change that?
Yeah, no, I mean it's an interesting conundrum that we have today because we've 30 years ago, called 1940s, right? The Industrial Revolution for us, and we were building everything in the United States. We were sending machinery other places to duplicate what we're doing. And in the idea of building stuff less expensive and cheaper, we started looking at overseas where they're paying $25 a month to somebody versus $25 an hour here, right? And so we watched this unfold in our industry and just in general contracting in general, and construction in general. And I think we can build more factories in the United States. There's some things that we can build quick, like for example, my door plant, I got up and running inside a little over a year and a half, from greenfield. But for like hardware, for example, much bigger problem because you have the EPA plating. A lot of these government agencies have stranglehold a lot of manufacturing for off-gassing and air quality. We had LA's in the 70s and it was horrible, right? And now it's much cleaner air today, which there is some great things that have come from that. But I think it's going to be difficult for us as an industry to get a lot of that back to the United States. Some of it I just don't think is going to happen. I think some of it can, for sure. We've got lumber, we have millwork, anything wood, metal fabrication. I think is still viable here. We still have some mills here. We have lost some of them. So I think in our industry, I think case goods, I think bedding, I think looming, I think some of that can come back, but we're going to need energy to help with that process. Because, for example, like an MDF and particle board and plywood mills and all of these, they use so much energy to generate the raw materials that I think we're not looking at that as the United States. And I think the new administration is looking at it from how to become more energy efficient in the United States to bring energy cheaper, less expensive, so then our materials can come down. Because that's really this driving thing that we have going on is through COVID and everything else, like we lost so much energy production in the United States that have been shut down, coal manufacturing, right? We've lost all that. And so energy has gone through the roof, and these mills that are there, it's just there's not that much margin to get to the levels that we want to pay for. China's different, right? They don't generate enough energy for their entire manufacturing. So they do rolling blackouts. They just pollute like nobody's business, but you're buying a widget for $5 versus the United States, it's $40, right? And so I think we can do it. I think from a manufacturing, I think there's a lot of sectors we can. I think we still have float glass in the United States, which is great, so we can produce more glass. But again, it's more expensive because of the energy that's driving it. So if we don't tackle that side of it, we're not going to see this softening of pricing in the United States, local manufacturing. It's just not going to get anywhere because it's driven so much by that. So that's why a lot of people have gone overseas, because it's just so much less expensive, even with freight, in a container. It's still way less than what we buy domestically. And, most people in the United States say, hey, I don't want my shower door from Home Depot to be $2,000, right? I want it to be $500. So it's a challenge, and for us, we looked at it from what can we manufacture? What could we start from scratch? What could we build to supply ourselves? And I think there's some other things. I like to see case goods come back. I think fabrics can come back, textiles, artwork. We got printing. Like there's a lot of things that can come back, but it's so energy driven, in my opinion.
That's I didn't think you were going to go there. The energy perspective is a unique take on it versus just cheap labor.
Yeah, I mean, labor's cheap. You witness these people in China, they're behind like little polishing wheels, but they're getting $25 for the month, and they work 12 hours on a crate with no heat. Like the atrocities of labor. Like when I used to go overseas and we would look at this stuff, it was disheartening to watch. And I think I think you'd ask anyone in the hospitality that have been over there, everyone from, the big brands, even probably yourself, have gone over to these manufacturing facilities over, whether it's Vietnam or Taiwan or China or Hong Kong. It's awful to watch. And I just think we have to make a cognitive effort to not promote that, in my opinion. And with that, like, I think we could pay fair wages here in the United States, but so much of it is driven, like, everyone's looking at just the cost of materials. Well, what drives that? And I'm telling you, like, if you look at any of these manufacturers, the energy that's used and the amount you're paying per kilowatt hour, there's not enough solar and wind. Like, we have to come up with better ways to drive that price down of energy to bring building materials down. If not, we're chasing our tail. And this is, no economist, but I just think that's a huge problem that we have to overcome in the United States, and we have to do it sooner than later, in order to be self-sufficient or be more self-sufficient, especially with AI, right? Everything that's coming on, the amount of energy, the water it uses, they have new gels, but we're digressing from hospitality, but there's just, it's a big underlying factor that we have to take a hard look at.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad there's people like you still building plants here in America, even as we speak.
Yes.
And getting it live, and I hope we see more of it.
Got a couple more in the works. Just stay tuned. Episode 2, we'll have maybe
good.
But we got a couple things cooking. So
good. Well, I have a few more questions, and then we'll get into we'll end with have some fun with some rapid fire shooting from the hip. But, I think we've covered so much of your story, but let's get to the people. And so, you haven't built this successful company by yourself and with Josh and Audrey. There's been people that have helped you along the way, but particularly Lance, is a special guy to me, and I know to you. And I actually want to read something that he sent me about you, and then
oh boy,
we'll go from there, and we'll have to beep out all the swear words he says about you.
Oh boy, all right.
So Lance says, I think Scott's personality has been the driving factor in his success over the years. People just gravitate towards him. Do right by him, and he will always do right by others. He's a very family-oriented man, and I consider him a friend of our family much before a boss of any kind. AC has always just felt like home to me and where I'm supposed to be. Although it's not my company, I've always thought of and treated it as if it was my own. Overall, he's a remarkable person whose drive has created a very successful business.
Wow, that was very that was very touching. He is. I mean, Lance, I've known. I mean, the way Lance got hired, and it just a good story. So I knew Lance way when I started AC, and it was probably only maybe 4 or 5 years into the company, maybe six. And he was a neighbor to one of our best friends, and so I saw he built these cabinets in his. If you haven't met Lance, so Lance, good looking cat, buff cat, but super good in construction. Like his knowledge is awesome, and he built these cabinets in his house that were off the charts, like unbelievable, with just like skill set. Like they didn't even have the best tools and built these things, and it was awesome. And so we were talking, and he was asking about my business, blah blah blah. And his wife Michelle, awesome, awesome lady, does hair at the time. And so my wife was getting her haircut with her, and then Audrey came home one night. She's like, "Hey, did you know Lance wants to work for you?" I was like, "What? Lance never said anything about working for me. He's working at a hospital right now doing maintenance." He's like, "No, Michelle says he really wants to work for you." So I called him up, and I'm like, "Hey, what's this? I heard you want to come work for me." And he was like, "Well, yeah, I really like, I don't like where I'm working." I said, "All right, like, I don't have a lot of money and I can't afford, like, how much you're making?" And he told me, I'm like, "I can match that right today." That's kind of extending what it is, but I'll teach you everything. And he came on and he was doing up whiteboards. He put up like glass whiteboards day one in our office, and then helped build a booth for Marriott. And then he started learning the doors, frames, and hardware from scratch. And he's just been an awesome add to us. I mean, it's got to be what, 8 years now, 8, 9 years. I apologize, Lance. I should know that off the top of my head. But he was just a solid, trustworthy, smart guy and driven. And for us, with Lance and just others, is we want to give everyone an opportunity. Like, yeah, someone has to be the boss. Someone has to take care of all that. But Josh and I have always looked at it as we can't build this without good people. So I have to give it opportunities to people to help build it. And they can't have a platform of building their career and their lives without me, right? So this is this back and forth between employees and owners. And it's probably one of the only socialist mindsets I have is we have to do it with good people. And I need to give them opportunities to build it. So if I build this thing up from the ground up, there's more opportunity for them to climb the ladder, right? And so my thing was, hey, you're the master of your own destiny. Here's your opportunity. Take as you wish. And I will give you every tool humanly possible to be successful. And if you can do that, then sky's the limit. And that's really been something we've really with all of our employees, some sink or swim, some don't make it. But a lot of people that have been here for a long time since the beginning, they started off at the bottom and they've worked their way up into senior management roles because the business grew with all the people, right? And that's sometimes hard with small business, as you know, like there's only so much room that you can grow. And then people are like, well, I have to move on to grow my career. And so, but if we can build the platform correctly, then there's room for growth for everybody and come along the way and have longevity with us. And really trying to find really good people. Like our thing is give people the opportunity and have the same mindset and ethos that we have, and you'll have a job for life and you will be successful and you'll make a lot of money.
Well, what I think is cool, Scott, and this was totally unplanned and a little serendipitous. Lance, as handy as he may have been, credit to you for teaching him everything he knows about door frames and hardware. So, it'd be interesting. You trained the guy who I think is the best door guy in the business, and so that speaks to your leadership and coaching philosophy. But, and what he said about you, he said, architectural concepts is not my company, but I've always treated it as my own.
Yeah.
And that kind of comes full circle back to when you were an employee at True Style. Earlier in this interview, about an hour ago, you said the same exact thing, that
Yeah.
it wasn't my company, but I treated it like my own, and I stayed in a shitty hotel, on the company money. And so I think, you should pause and, kind of acknowledge that your philosophy through life is sort of in your leadership style through people like Lance has been transferred into them. And, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but I think that speaks a lot about, your leadership ability and people wanting to come join you. And, I think that's super cool.
No, thank you. I mean, sometimes people tell me I'm too nice, and I probably give people way too much rope. But like Lance, he's out. Like, yeah, I've taught him everything he knows, but he's so surpassed me in that knowledge. Like, I mean, he's just. I don't even have to I don't have to like he knows where we're going, knows what we need to do, knows. I mean, he does. He treats it just like it's his business, and
Absolutely.
essentially the way I look at it is like he knows what to do, knows what we need to sell stuff at to keep the lights on and to make money, um, and he has, and I think we have a lot of employees like that have we've given them the opportunity, and they've showed us nothing but I shouldn't say love, but they really it's give and take. Like you do well for us, you'll make more money. And we've got we've been fortunate to really have a lot of core people, even our management team, like a Mark Stoddard and Eric Williams and Dana and Megan, like all the people, Anthony, all these people that work inside that support Lance, right? So Lance sells it, brings it in, gives you what you need, then we'd have to deliver the product still and deliver the project. And then our project management staff has the same mentality as Lance and myself, and they work with your team and your PM teams the same way, with that same mindset. Because if Lance sells it and tells you everything you need to know and goes, and then we can't deliver it, then it was all for naught, right? And so the depth of our bench is really, really good. And we're not a huge company, but we manage a lot of work and we do a really good job of delivering it, because we're all in that same boat, rowing the same direction every day.
That's great.
And just, sometimes I probably give too much rope to people, but I want people to be successful. I do not like to micromanage people, because if I'm micromanaging you, then your time here is limited, because I don't have time for it. I've given you the tools and empowered you. If you can't do it, then maybe this isn't the job for you. And it's not always for everybody. Door frames and hardware is not sexy, so I try to make it look it, but so
it's not. But this is my last question before, or really comment, and we'll get in the rapid fire. But I started by asking you if you have interesting or cool hobbies, and part of the reason I asked that is doors, frames, hardware are not sexy, but everyone who works for you, I'm not going to say sexy, is
yeah,
is cool. And I've met half a dozen people that work there, from Lance to Mike, Eric. Everyone I
mm-hmm.
interact with is cool. They have fun, and more so than being cool, they give a shit.
Yeah,
Like I have a lot of vendors that don't, and they're just sending me quotes, and they're wrong, and they're not putting in freight or tax, and it's sloppy. And I never had that experience with your culture, so I think that's says a lot. You might not be selling sexy products, but you have people motivated in a way where they're taking ownership. I mean, you could have told me, I've been working with you guys for 5 or 6 years at least. You could have told me Lance owns the company, and I would never have been like, no way. I totally would have believed it. And I
yep.
think that speaks a lot to your leadership and something you should be really proud of.
No, thank you. It's been. I mean, I kind of pinch myself sometimes to where it's at, like watching how it's grown and how many people work for us, and work for me. Just I don't know. It's a little surreal, I guess. And um, yeah, it's just when you start, like 20 years have gone by like that, and you go from zero to where we're at today, and it's been quite the journey. Like it's been fun. Like we've had a lot of good laughs, and fishing trips and all kinds of different things, and making Lance drive the fish while we all slept in the car while he was about ready to go off the road. Just all kind. I mean, I don't know. Like as you like with your business, you just kind of watch it and you just kind of go, "Wow, how did it get to here?" Um, and it just yeah, it's fun. It's been a really good ride, and wouldn't change it for the world. My kids are just like, well, my dad's a door guy. I'm like, yeah, I'm a door guy. Yeah. And then everyone's like, hey, you did a hotel? I'm like, yeah, we did a hotel. There's a lot of doors. I'm like, there we go. There's a lot of doors. So anyway, yeah.
It's
So I appreciate the kind words.
it's really cool, and you're one of the guys I think of when I had the idea for this podcast. That there's small business in America, and particularly within our little world of hospitality. I totally agree. You use the term incestual, but we always say it's there's a million hotels, but hospitality is such a small industry. and you and I are in the construction end of that industry, and it is a small industry, but the opportunity to shine light on AC and tell your story, and you being the founder and still leading it today is a really cool thing. And
Well, thank you.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I like it. There's a lot of still good ones. We still have a lot of good mom and pop, smaller businesses that are doing their own acquisitions. Like for example, the people that acquired us in March, North Atlantic Corporation, family owned, Humphreys, amazing people, and they're going in the same direction. They employ 600 people, really, really good people, and so it was one of those that was an easy transition to be able to build this thing bigger than me, which I'm looking forward to. Is I want a legacy for it, of course, but at the end of the day, is I get to be a part of this now, phase 2 of really growing this to what I really truly wanted it to be, probably faster than I could have by myself. And Josh and I doing it ourselves. So,
well, the new larger entity, I was going to ask you about the acquisition, but the new larger entity is going to have to consult with Audrey about what the next burn the boat moment's going to be, and I'm
oh
sure
yeah,
I'm sure you have some fun plans.
we
So
do. It's going. I mean, it's a lot of fun. And Audrey's, she's like, "So are you gonna work less, travel less?" I'm like, "Yeah, probably not. We'll see." I love the work. I love our industry. I just love the people, and so it's hard to say that I would step away from it. There's so much more to do in the business, and how do I get there? And the Humphreys have just been really great about that, and they're just like, look, they actually want me to buy more machinery that I'm not really personally. I would look at it as like, I can't afford to do that right now. Sure, we can do that. I'm like, no, I'll let you know when we're ready to pull the trigger on that. I'm still operating it as if it was still mine today. So it's I don't think that'll ever change.
awesome. Well, we'll bring it home with a couple fun rapid fire questions, and
Oh boy. All right.
from the hip, and we'll wrap things up. Well, you mentioned you're a golfer. Are you going for the green and two, or are you laying up?
Green and two.
What's your favorite hotel?
JW Marriott.
Any particular location, or that's
I would say JW in DC is one of my favorites.
do you have a favorite sports business analogy or metaphor?
Oh, uh, no, go for it on fourth down every time.
All right, Dan Campbell.
Yes.
What's a strongly held belief that most people would disagree with?
Employees first before you.
Best advice, or you could take this one of two ways. Best advice that you've either received or given, or best advice you didn't take.
Okay, so the best advice I didn't take was my brother-in-law. I was going to buy a Bitcoin for $4,000.
Oh my God.
We literally were getting ready to push go. He worked for a Bitcoin company. He's like, dude, this is going to be off the charts. And I'm like, and I didn't have really $4,000 to spend. And I was like, and I went in for $200 of a Bitcoin. It was just horrible a day. Yeah. Anyway.
Last question. I always end it the same way. In the hospitality business and in the spirit of hospitality, what's the kindest thing that anyone's ever done for you, Scott?
The kindest thing. Bought me so there's two. So letters from employees, unprovoked, on a thank you, just out of the blue. And the other was, I'm a big cocktail guy. I love craft cocktails. And so Lance and Dan Benz bought me a smoker Manhattan for Christmas. And I thought that was just, I sent them videos of it. I use it all the time. It was just it's the little things in life that matter, and it was just a kind gesture that just didn't always stuck with me, just a little thing. But the letters have been, I keep them. People just, thank me for their job and thank me for the opportunity and stuff. And those things, those really matter to me. Those are, I keep those close, as, that means I'm doing things right. And that's I don't want to lose sight of that.
Yeah, I love it. We have a small business owners. We have a great. It's a great life. It's a great pleasure, but it's also a responsibility. For to take care of the people that work with us. So I think you're doing a
100%.
great job of this, and this was a ton of fun, Scott. I appreciate you joining.
This was great. I really appreciate it, Kory. It was fun. My first one. So thank you.
All right, thanks, man.
All right. Thank you.